Well, 2022 is coming to a close. And with that, we have our official DIY Musician podcast predictions for what will happen in 2023. So here we go. Let's get to it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 324 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, where on today's episode, we'll be discussing our predictions for 2023. My name is Kevin Bruner, and joining me is Chris Robley. Chris, how are you doing?
I wish I could say my pale face and rabid dog, bloodshot eyes were the result of some amazing party, but or even a single weed gummy. But instead, it's I've been fighting the flu for about a week. So my apologies to YouTube viewers for the eyes, and probably my apologies to everyone for my voice. But such is life.
Yeah, it's been going around. I'm getting over it as well, and I don't know. I'm looking at the video right now. I look like I might be a little stoned. I promise I'm not. I do need a haircut though, obviously.
Well, this is the episode where we're supposed to predict the future. So it's okay that if we're both, tapped into a different state of consciousness.
There you go.
Seeing into the future.
Yeah, thinking outside the box. That's what we need.
The top prediction is that I'll be healed in a few days in time for Christmas, and I'll stay healthy all next year.
Yes, exactly. All right. We've got a lot to dive into for this episode. I think it's going to be a fun one. But first, just a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, especially if you're watching on YouTube. YouTube's been recommending our videos a lot lately. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and the notification button is helpful as well. And if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, make sure you're subscribed. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, the Apple Podcast app, any podcast app. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any in 2023. It's always fun when we get to the end of a year to look back at where we came from and make some predictions of where we're going. So in today's episode, we're going to do sort of a quick recap of 2022. Then we're going to dive into our predictions of 2023. And then we've got some calls and emails. So you're going to want to stick around for the whole thing. And most people are kind of slowing down for the holiday season now anyway. So just settle in and enjoy a nice podcast. Maybe get some coffee or hot cocoa or whatever your beverage of choice is.
There you go.
I've got a Red Bull here.
Really cozy winter drink, Red Bull.
That's right. Hey, I've got my Christmas shirt on too there for you, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. And I've got a wintry cap on. So
yeah, well, you always do. You live in Maine. That's just it's standard issue. So lots happened this past year, and it was funny, Chris, when we were talking about preparing for this podcast, it was kind of like blowing my mind a little bit just to think about where we were a year ago right now. COVID was still in full swing. Omicron was exploding everywhere. We still weren't sure if we were going to have the DIY Musician Conference. I mean, we've gone through a lot just in this past year.
Yeah. Well, I know we were talking beforehand about what to predict. And I felt a little bit stuck, not because I don't have predictions, but my thought was like, I think 2022 is another odd pause year. Like we had the COVID years where it was like,
everything was done.
Everything was.
Yeah.
But even 2022, which I think everyone felt like, oh, once Omicron's over, we're going to be like back to normal. Then like the Ukraine invasion happened, the economy tanked, there were a lot of layoffs, fears of recession, massive inflation. And so like, in a way, I almost feel like all my predictions for this year that's about to end just got delayed a year. Like the world's focus went again somewhere completely other than, developing and bettering the music industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Chris's line just to say that NFTs didn't take off like he thought they would.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
We're going to get into that.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. So a quick recap, like you said, a lot of things that we thought would happen got delayed. Um, the first half of the year, at least through spring, COVID was definitely still impacting a lot of artists' career choices or decisions based on whether or not touring made sense. And I think what was also 2022 really marked in my mind how, depending on where you were, how uneven everyone's experience could potentially be. Like, I'm up here in the Northwest in the Portland, Oregon area, and my experience for the first half of 2022 was completely different than the rest of my bandmates who live in Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina, where it was like living in two different worlds. And I was traveling back and forth quite a bit because we were writing songs, and we played a few shows, and it was very weird to be like my experience of what was open and what artists were doing up here in this area compared to other parts of the world.
I'm
Well,
laughing because I'm remembering, I think late February, early March of 2022, you, me, and Christina met in Austin, Texas
we
to start
did.
planning our conference. And Christina left Los Angeles, probably where, you know,
Yeah.
95% of the people had masks on and stuff. And we're still staying separate. And then we got to Austin and she was like, what the hell is this? Like college parties everywhere, people smashed into clubs. It was like a completely different world than what she had left 4 hours earlier.
Yeah. And so winter and spring of 2020, very uneven depending on where you were. It might still be like nothing's open, or hey, it's business as usual. Then with that and Omicron wave coming and going, and things started opening back up, I think everyone, like you sort of alluded to already, thought touring would just be on big time, and that seemed to be the plan. And then we started hearing things about concerts and tours being canceled again, like midsummer, going into the fall. And this time it was not because of COVID, but because of inflation.
Yeah.
And some of these bigger tours that the cost, especially when you're thinking about fuel, pretty much doubled in price. Some of these bigger tours, it became cost prohibitive, and some major artists started canceling tours because of that.
Yeah, it's like we had this sort of double economic there was already kind of the growing and general inflation or whatever you'd call it, where things were getting more expensive. And then on top of that, with Ukraine, suddenly there was this oil panic.
Yeah.
And, you know, oil's pretty important when you want to drive around a country and play different cities every night. So yeah, I had a lot of indie level friends who were just like, I can't do it. I can't, it's too expensive.
Yep. And then some other interesting things happened, I think, this year that were sort of big landmarks for music. We had Stranger Things really propel two songs back onto the charts. One in particular, Kate Bush, but also Metallica,
Master
and it was
Puppets, yeah.
an old catalog really having some dominating moments, and sort of to me it was sort of a big emphasis on what I've been saying over the last couple years. Now that, you know, Chris, my oldest daughter, just turned 16 last week, which is crazy. But really watching my two daughters, start to engage with music, and how extremely different it is compared to when I was their age. And so for them, something like Kate Bush or Metallica, that's not old catalog music. They don't think about it that way because they don't go to a store and can only buy what's been out the last 6 months. Music's music to them. So for them, it's not old catalog music. It's just good music that they discovered that's out there now. And so I think that really put an emphasis on how music has changed and how people engage with it, because Kate Bush dominated the charts. They had to change some rules for her to get the due that she was, you know, the credit that she should get for having a song being performed as much as it was.
Yeah.
So
Well, but with those examples, it felt like a bit of a continuation from, I think it was in 2020, what happened with the Fleetwood Mac song on
oh
TikTok.
yeah.
It's kind of just this revisiting of things that are suddenly once again made timeless in a way. And with the Stranger Things examples, like my daughter got into a bunch of other Kate Bush songs like that, you know, are very bizarre. And I was like, this is great. My kid's like getting into some arty music. And then she was listening to Master of Puppets one night while she was doing like an arts and crafts project. And then there's a show called Wednesday that she and I've been watching, which is probably too old for her, but I'm just a bad parent. But in that show, in Wednesday, there's a song by the Cramps, which is, a very old song that
Yeah.
kind of has a similar major placement in the way that Kate Bush's song did. So I think that's been getting a lot of attention too.
Yeah. So interesting year as far as that's concerned. The DIY Musician Conference made its glorious return to Austin, and that was an amazing time. That was a highlight of 2022. And just bringing the whole music community together, it was clear that we all needed it. It was an emotional event. And I think there was a lot of emotions just around being together, but also people realizing, what they had missed and just how important community is in the music experience. And just, it was an amazing event.
Anyone who's listened to our podcast for a while probably heard Kevin and I both cry in our recap episode of that conference, but it really was, just a great reminder of how we need each other.
Yeah, it was a special time. The other thing I think that really in 2022 happened was the just complete dominance of TikTok. Yes, TikTok had been around for a while. You already mentioned in 2020 that one video, the guy skating, drinking ocean spray, cranberry juice, and listening to Fleetwood Mac. That was like a big moment for TikTok. But this past year, so much traffic and activity shifted to TikTok. TikTok started maturing as a platform. It wasn't just a place where people did dance videos. It's, pretty much multi-generations are on there now and engaging with it like a video platform. And there's some funny TikTok news that I heard just a couple days ago, but we'll save that for our prediction. So
a couple things I wanted to say about TikTok in 2020 is I think for the first time I saw them a little bit on the defensive because, we've seen other platforms racing to catch up with what TikTok does, Reels and YouTube Shorts and all this stuff. And then TikTok started introducing new features that are mimicking like what's it called? Be Real.
Yeah.
Basically there's even younger, cooler, hipper apps that people are using in TikTok for the first time. I think is like, ooh, we got to like start replicating these. And the other thing that happened for the first time is I heard some young people say TikTok is for old people. I was like, what? Wow. I'm like doubly old then.
Yeah. I'm old enough to not care. You're always going to be chasing something.
Yeah.
You're never going to be satisfied. So there you go. The last thing we had on our recap for 2022 that was interesting to think about over the last year is it feels like live streaming completely disappeared, like gone. Nobody does it. It's so weird. Weird.
I did visit Twitch once in a while and just type in, music or something. And I know that technically speaking, plenty of people were still on there live streaming.
Yes, there are. But I went from, opening Instagram to typically having like 2 or 3 live streams. You know how it always puts those first up on the stories, always having 2 or 3 of those going at any given time to barely ever seeing them. Same with on Facebook. If I opened Facebook, I'd see somebody live streaming, especially on Facebook. And even on TikTok, I'd see it occasionally. And the stuff I see live now isn't necessarily people playing or performing or whatever, but it was very obvious that from the amount of live streams that were happening in 2020 and 2021, that in 2022, it seems like there was less than there was in 2019 before people were doing it out of necessity.
Well, I have a theory on that, and I just thought of it, so it's probably a terrible theory. But it's not only due to the fact that people can go and play live again. Like, obviously, that would cut into people's audience and creator interest in watching and creating these live streams. That clearly happened. But I think also when people had the impulse to video something that was a performance, because of the dominance of TikTok, I think their inclination was to be like, I'm going to do a performance video for TikTok, or I'm going to do a cover song video for TikTok. So instead of it needing to be a live stream, they wanted to like put that time into similar ish types of content, but streamlined for this platform that seemed to be taking over the world. That's my theory.
Yeah, that's probably a good theory. I'll buy into
All
that
right, sweet.
theory, Chris. That's a
Okay.
good theory. All right. So that's just some of the things that recapping of 2022. It was interesting to think about it because when we started talking about predictions for 2023, it really hit me how weird of a year 2022 was, and very uneven, and it felt like a tale of two halves of a year. And it's weird year. So Chris, 2023, we've got our music business crystal balls out. We're gonna look into the future. What's gonna happen?
All right, so here we go.
Give it to me.
When the bull market returns, NFTs and the metaverse are back on, baby. No, so I should caveat that by saying I have no idea how long a recession might last, 3 months, a year, whatever. So it might not be 2023, but at some point when things are looking good well, I shouldn't say for the world. They're never all good for the, you know what I mean? When things in our economy improve, I think all of the interest, the like speculative money, the mania will go back into crypto and NFTs in the metaverse, but with the benefit of that stuff surviving yet another death. Every few years they pronounce crypto dead. But not only that, a lot of the hard things about using crypto and NFTs, all the reasons why it's just so cumbersome, will have been solved. Not everything, but a lot of the usability stuff will have been improved greatly by that point. So at the time where the money interest is there, I think it will be all the more easy for users and fans to get involved as well. So NFTs will be back. Hey, Donald Trump sold out of a bunch of NFTs.
I was just going to ask you if you bought one.
It crossed my mind for a split second because I knew I could probably just flip it that same night, but I was like, I can't. I just morally can't do that. So no, I didn't. Apologies to Trump fans.
The one thing that I'll set the NFT comment aside because that one is just I have no idea what'll happen there. Like you said, the Trump thing, he sold out of them instantly. And that was the first big NFT drop I had heard about in a while. We had all this discussion about it early 2022, and then it seemed to just kind of disappear for a while. And then crypto, the economy and some of the stuff going on with the crypto world has been interesting. But the metaverse, that's one thing where I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen there. If there's a big opportunity, everything that it gets described about it and how it can relate to music, to me, just does not seem interesting.
Well, okay. So it's one of those terms that everyone defines it their own way. And of course there's the crypto version of the metaverse, but we could even just say like the general metaverse, something more like Roblox, Fortnite, like, these domains that you can enter as a digital avatar or whatever and have an experience. I don't think that's going away, even if that's sort of open to all. And there seemed to be more and more emphasis on music in those places. Roblox has concerts and all this stuff. So I think we'll hear a lot more about that too.
Yeah. I mean, we had that. You remember years ago when the Bolt was on the show, he interviewed an artist that was doing concerts inside of Second
Life. I do. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like it's a new idea. It's, and I agree with what you said. Yeah. It depends on how you define the metaverse. When I think about the metaverse and what Facebook is trying to do, I think about like with the headsets and virtual reality. To me, that's what they were trying to push forward. And all the ideas around that to me seemed like novelty things, like, hey, you can wear this and be like you're at the front of the concert, in the pit watching the band. I'm like, yeah, that's great once. That's kind of fun, but it's not like something I need to do over and over again, or else I just do it for real. Because it's not going to sound, or I don't know. It just doesn't seem, it seems like a gimmick, not something that people want to do over and over again. Like they'll try it once. It's like, oh, that was cool. And then they move on with their lives. Not something that is real sustaining. That's so far, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, did you hear that Walmart launched their own little metaverse land inside of Roblox? And like
that's the worst. Who wants to be at Walmart?
I know, and the like sales pitch on why you should go is like all of the great experiences you've come to know from Walmart in the metaverse. I'm like, I don't want to go to Walmart in the metaverse. I want to be like flying through clouds and stuff I can't do in real life.
I know. Gosh, that's the best we can do. We've come up with. We have all this technology, and we're putting ourselves virtually into Walmart.
It is. I actually looked. It's a bit of a fantasy version of Walmart, so it's not like you're in a store with fluorescent lighting or whatever.
With questionably dressed people.
Just to go back to the NFTs for a second, I do want to give Donald Trump or whoever came up with this thing some credit, because I feel like he did with the NFTs exactly what artists can do. It wasn't just about this dumb superhero trading card. It's a whole like VIP experience. You know, you get to go to Mar-a-Lago and eat dinner with him.
Really?
I think if you bought 3, it like bumped you up to some extra fan level where like, as long as those 3 are in your crypto wallet, and you get some extra experience with them. And so it's like all the, you know, if you listen to our NFT episode, you heard me talk about utility in quotes a lot. So his had all this extra stuff baked into it, which I think is why artists will benefit from these things once they're easy to execute.
Yeah. We'll see. Or you could just give them a gift card that says the same thing.
A Mar-a-Lago gift dinner card.
Yeah, the you know, we used to call them vouchers. You know, person who holds this ticket can get access to these things. I mean, you know, what else have we?
One thing related to, you know, we were talking about Roblox and metaverse stuff is I do think we'll hear more about how the definitions of sync licensing are expanding, and what licensing music entails is it will expand. And like in the previous year, CD Baby licensed our catalog to Peloton. So it's not just about getting your music synced up to commercials and TV shows and movies in the same old way. I mean, that is still a huge portion of it, but interactive exercise videos, corporate NFTs, which are a thing, like a corporation that wants to have music as a component of their NFT, but they don't want to pay to create the music. They can license music that way. Music in the metaverse, all this stuff. So I think sync licensing will take on a bunch of new revenue sources.
Yeah, I think the one thing that always is expanding is the way people are using music as more digital platforms emerge. And, you know, I've said that I'm skeptical about the metaverse. I don't think I don't think the metaverse is going away. I think in gaming and that aspect of it, it's thriving. I was mainly relating to the usage for music specifically, but in those games and those experiences, there's more and more music being used, which absolutely is expanding sync opportunities and just where music shows up compared to what we might have experienced just a few years ago. So,
yeah. I know the next thing on our list is AI. So you should just run with that one. I know you have some thoughts.
Well, you put on the notes here. Will there be an AI reckoning? I think there was some interesting things. We didn't have enough time to really dive into it, and maybe we do a whole another episode about in the new year about AI music. But I've seen headlines recently about how this might impact copyright laws and things like that. Can you really copyright music that's generated automatically? And if so, where's the line? All that kind of stuff. Who owns the work? That was some of the headlines I've seen. I saw people actually talking about that just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. All those AI images, like people uploading photos of themselves and the
Yeah.
AI doing variations of it. It's like, whose image is that? Is it mine? Is it the computer's? Is it the person that made the software? Who owns that image now? That question is going to be needed to be answered about music as well. Like if I upload a guitar part and it auto generates something, who owns that? Do we share it? Is there copyright? Lots of questions around that are being asked. But also, what does it do to the independent market or just the music market in general? Another headline I saw about AI music is that it was a company. It wasn't Spotify, but that had their own playlists and had a bunch of AI music, filling up these playlists. And it's like, what does it do to the music market? Does it crater the part of the market where music is just being used in the background and artists have benefited? Like we've seen a lot of piano players have big paydays because their music gets used a lot in places that aren't necessarily maybe active listening. But does that crater that market? What happens there when we can just randomly generate tracks to fill those kind of needs?
I mean, that to me is always like the big existential question of like, does AI, if in the future AI can just sort of create music from scratch, start to finish, does that really diminish our value or prove our value as human artists? Like, do we need to keep writing? If by, sort of the standards of the masses, an AI composed piece of music does just as well or better than a human's, are we obsolete? Like, those things are terrifying to me, and I don't want to be like overly technophobic or whatever. But like I know there's ways in which augmenting our creativity with technology has always been a part of making music. So I don't want to be closed to the idea that AI can help us make music. I just really am terrified of the point where it's like, hey, we don't need you anymore, buddy.
We all saw The Matrix.
Yeah. I guess it didn't end well, right? They eventually turned back to human.
Eventually.
After a few hundred years or whatever.
Yeah. It only took a couple hundred years. It'll be interesting because I think AI music is gonna, my prediction for 2023 is that AI music will be a big area of discussion. Not saying that it's going to take over in 2023, but I think it's going to become more of a question about some of the legalities, like I said, copyright, who owns what, I mean, is it a derivative work? I mean, all these things that come up based on what someone had inputted into a system and, something else got made in return by the computer.
One discussion I wish I kind of had a closer ear on is like, what are the modern conceptions of making something? Like, which maybe sounds like a ridiculous question, but like forget AI, like GarageBand will make you a beat. Like, my daughter will have her iPad out and she'll quote, make something and be like, Dad, listen to this song I made. And I'm like, you didn't make that. You push some, you put up some guardrails for a computer to make something, or, the engineers in Palo Alto or wherever they are. Like, so if she already thinks of herself as making something in that context, like, what does it mean to just feed AI a few parameters and it does did you make, all that stuff about not just legal ownership, but like that sort of ownership you have when you're like proud of making something. I did that like from scratch,
Yeah.
And so what does it even mean from scratch in a digital age? I guess that's my question.
I don't know. Who knows?
I didn't make my guitar, like someone else handed that to me. So
that's true. That's true. I think the real question and where some of those headlines that I saw that weren't related to copyright were sort of leaning into where, as it relates to, okay, you're a music platform. And this was the thing that people were saying about Spotify. This was probably like 2018. I can't remember. But there was a bunch of their bigger playlist, and they were like chill playlist or something. It was like instrumental stuff. I think there was some lo-fi playlist as well. And most of the tracks were owned by this company. And then when people investigated, that company was owned by Spotify. And so it's like the headlines were about, well, they are just creating AI music to fill these playlists that are very popular so they don't have to pay, or that money comes back to them. So that was one of the headlines. It was a different service. I can't remember. I don't have the headline in front of me, but it was related to a different service, a much smaller service, but it was that kind of question. It's like, it appears that most of the songs in these popular playlists are AI, and that means either they're not paying, it's a way to get out of paying royalties, or a way to just funnel the money back to them, and that being like a questionable practice. That's where I think the industry is like, what's going on here? Because the way streaming is paid, most people think streaming is paid by, hey, you get a stream, you get paid X amount. That's not how it works. It's pooled and then split up by percentage of listener share. So however much money comes in gets split up by that. So if you have a way to own more listener share, or you can change how the economics of it work.
Sneaky.
I mean, that's what the game the major labels are playing, but
on TikTok, right? Aren't they scooping up a bunch of artists that have like their first song came out, like they've never made much music, and they get signed to deals like probably with very little intention of ever truly developing them as artists. They just want to scoop up the TikTok attention.
Yep, that's been happening. It's also been happening on YouTube, where they claim tracks that they know aren't theirs.
I don't know. Did you have more on AI?
No, that's good. We don't want to get depressed.
Well, this next one could be depressing, depending on your perspective. I think we're going to have a lot more people who make music start to embrace a creator first mindset, as opposed to an artist or musician first mindset. I guess to explain that, I think you and we're musicians, and we all this other stuff, the marketing, social media, video making, even if it's fun and can be inspiring, it's all in service to the main thing, the music. And I think we may have reached this tipping point where people will start to regard them, people who have multiple talents, they have charisma, they have video editing skills, they make music. I think they might start to just think of themselves as creators. Their medium is just digital expression, and they're going to use the tools and the platforms as they can to get more attention and to have a career, but it isn't necessarily going to flow back in a very defined priority sense of I'm an artist first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, we've been seeing that shift happen for years. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, I think you're saying that we're getting to a point where that is like completely recognized, that I am not a musician, I am a creator. That could be somebody's viewpoint, where, or to me, it's like when you're explaining it to your parents, like, I'm going to go be a musician. They're like, that sounds like the dumbest thing ever. So now you can say, I'm going to go be a creator.
Well, I guess what I mean is, I think we're reaching a point where it's no longer a means to an end. All the digital, social marketing, content creation stuff, I think for 15 years that's the means to the end of getting my songs heard.
Yeah.
And I think the tipping point is now that is the end, that like, not economically speaking, but that it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a TikTok producer. Like, I want to make beats for TikTok or whatever, something like that, where it's more about the audience, I guess, than your own sort of defined art.
I think, to me, the main difference is it's all about actively creating something.
Yeah.
That, to me, because I tend to, when I look at myself and what I like to do, it's like, I like to take an idea and make it a reality. That could be a musical idea. That could be you know, something for work or a podcast. It could be lots of different things. It's like, I just like to take something. It could be an idea for a video, take an idea and make it a reality.
Mhm.
And to me, the musical experience could be all about that, which is very different than the traditional, I play music for people, I record music for people to listen to.
Mhm.
To me, that's two different things. And I think the idea of just creating for the sake of creating is what a lot of people are doing, which is great. To me, when you were talking, I was thinking of that TikToker Jake. Um, that seems to be, he is just to me more of a creator than a musician or artist, even though he has some songs that have done well. But when you watch his videos and how he does things, it's more about this. It's not about making music that people will go listen to. It's about creating videos and interactions and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think those two worlds are going to continue to run in parallel, but maybe get a little further apart, and maybe those two, I don't know. I could see there being a lot of friction for the true artists, like that are like, I'm so sick. Where do I live now? I'm so sick of this, like getting on in front of a camera and having to do stupid stuff in order to just have a music career. Where do I go to just have a music career? I have a feeling that sentiment is going to continue to grow, because it feels like those two paths existed, and then COVID hit and put a lot of emphasis on just creating online, being in front of a camera, doing things that get people to interact and connect with online. The idea of a music career is just making music that someone puts on in the car and listens to while they drive down the road. That's your career. That seems like, I don't know, not the reality anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much of the habits and expectations that we, adopted during COVID, you can kind of like put back in the box in a way. I don't think we can expect to return entirely. Although the pendulum always swings. Like I've been seeing stories of like high school kids who are getting flip phones and not being online in that same way. So maybe there'll be a musical equivalent of like, I just play live and I put out my vinyl records.
Yeah, I could see that, or maybe the return to like house shows or secret shows or like the pop-up shows.
Mhm.
Because the one thing that's interesting that I think is still impacting the music business, especially in certain cities, definitely here in Portland. We just had our CD Baby holiday party, and it was in downtown Portland, and it is a ghost town down there. And there's lots of empty buildings and things boarded up, and areas where some of the clubs used to be are not fun places to be, or the clubs are gone, or where they are just kind of sketchy, and people not really wanting to go out as much. And Portland's had a rough go of it the last couple of years, but I could see that impacting the live show experience for a while. Like people like, yeah, never mind, I'll just stay home, or I'll go to some place that's more local, or I don't know. That to me, it definitely feels like a thing here in Portland. And when I talk about going to a show, or have talked to other people about going to shows, that always comes up, like, I don't know if I want to go out, and it's not like it used to be.
I mean, I suppose if that does lead to a more vibrant, like hyper local, like neighborhood based music scenes and stuff, that could be a good outcome.
Yeah, well, that's
you
one of the
talked
things
about
that was
that.
interesting to me, was that here, I live in a small town called Camas, Washington. It's right across the river from Portland. I live closer to the CD Baby office in Portland than most people in Portland. But what's interesting to me is that like the local tap room just in our little downtown area started having bands during COVID. And so they've actually created sort of this new venue and kind of music experience that never would have flown before the pandemic, because Portland's too close. Just go to
Mhm.
Portland and go to but so that is something that I've noticed happening, that like some of these establishments that were open during COVID, trying to attract people, get them out, adding music and things like that. So yeah, maybe that is the thing. It's like the clubs aren't necessarily in the cultural center anymore. They're out where the people are.
Yeah. Well, our next point, whether you decide to be a creator or an artist first, doesn't matter. You both have the same risk of platforms disappearing or being shut down by the government or fading in popularity or whatever, which the prediction we're making is that there will be a renewed emphasis on the importance of your fan base that you can control off of a platform.
Yeah, and I think in 2023 we'll definitely do an episode about how to get your fans off of social networks. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't use social networks and they aren't great platforms, but like how to move them from TikTok or Facebook or Instagram owning that relationship to you owning that relationship, because that is critical. Yes, had lots of headlines about various governments wanting to shut down or get rid of TikTok. Here in the United States, they just made it, multiple states made it where if you have a government issued device, it cannot have TikTok on it. And there was another country, I saw a headline, another country that was making a push to eliminate it altogether. So as things like privacy concerns, who owns what and who's looking at the data heats up, you don't want to just one day find out that this platform that you built a huge following on is gone or limited, or you no longer have access to your fans. You got to actively be thinking about, how do I get these people to a place where I own the relationship, at least the fans that are really there for the music.
Yeah, and I think the other half of that is like, not only how do I get them off of the platform, but what do I do with them once I've got them on my website or on my whatever text list or whatever, because you, yes, can earn significant money if you have the good fortune of having massive streaming engagement or massive views on TikTok. Like, that can pay, but it's not going to pay the bills forever, because you have to have something else to your business, whether it's ticket sales, merch sales, whatever, some offer. Could even be like guitar lessons or, whatever, but something you can sell people besides simply just endlessly creating content that's entertaining, but never really pays you for essentially what you're spending all your time doing.
Excuse me. I think that's one thing that I've been going through a lot of. I bought a couple training courses related to social media recently, because these platforms are always changing. So even if you've taken courses like 2 years ago, all the stuff's different now. So I'm like, got some downtime. I'll, get up to speed on some of these tricks of marketing on some of these platforms as they evolve. And TikTok has already changed drastically. And one of the things that you said was highlighted very specifically by someone from TikTok in one of these videos. And really it comes down to, let me see, I actually wrote it down, that there's two types of people using TikTok. And really TikTok started out just being this fun, entertaining, like, hey, this is goofy, we do this thing and lots of people see it. And it's based around music initially, in which it still heavily leans on music, but it really was about entertainment, like just keeping people on there entertained as long as possible. But then as it developed and matured as a platform and more content got on there, and people making content about cooking, about, music production, about all, any topic that you'd find on YouTube, the platform started to evolve. And so if you're somebody that's trying to build an audience, they specifically said build followers that are engaged with you and not just the content, like one viral video. And they also said build around storytelling, not viral moments. So there really is this shift in the platform, and they were saying their algorithms changed, and from just like these crazy viral moments, which you can do, and it's entertaining and fun. But if you're wanting to use the platform to build an audience, that really the strategy is shifting and changing, and you know, how your channel performs is going to be impacted based on the kind of content you're creating. So it's interesting how they're morphing a lot. And the other TikTok headline I just saw a couple days ago is how they're testing horizontal video because they want to go after the YouTube audience. So it's like these platforms,
Interesting.
they can never just do their thing and do their thing well, because trends come and go, and then the platform changes, the algorithm changes, and it's not what it used to be. It could have some new benefits, but it also, some of the things that got people there in the first place might go away. But the main point was that TikTok is very geared towards like entertaining you. And when you create videos, if you're kind of mimic that entertainment value, that your videos can get shown to a lot of people, but that might not be building the right audience for your music, or whatever you're trying to build an audience around. And if you just get a bunch of random followers, that can actually negatively impact your account and the results you see going forward.
Yeah, one thing while we're talking about sort of the specific features of platforms, didn't you tell me you saw something recently where like Instagram had done some soul searching and they might be de-emphasizing video and reels in the next year?
Yeah, their CEO quoted saying that they put too much emphasis on video. And it was in response to somebody, it was a photographer, lamenting the fact that they were seeing far less impact, because a photographer, they're using the main feed, they're posting images, and they're like, my posts don't get seen by anybody anymore, and it's really impacted my business. And the CEO mentioned something about they had put too much emphasis on video, and we're going to be making some adjustments in the coming year. So to me, that was good news, because it's like these platforms, they get people using them, and then they abandon their users to go chase the new shiny object. I think going to be an interesting year as it relates to social media, especially on the front of the privacy issue, platforms stagnating. It's kind of funny to think about TikTok stagnating already. You made that comment about that's for old people. It's like, social networks used to have a longer life than like 2 years in the mainstream. And I know TikTok's been around for a while, but it really, this past year was when it really became a more of a mature platform, where you get all types of creators on there, all age groups on there, and it becoming a thing that, it apparently surpassed YouTube in search volume. So at least that's what they were saying. Who knows?
You know that term runway that's used to be like, how much buffer money do you have to kind of get
Yes.
your business? I'm imagining some world in which like a new social app is like, oh, we've got like 2.5 years of runway, and people be like, oh, you don't need that much. You'll be out of business. Your app will be done in 6 months. Like, don't worry.
It's
You
going
got
to
more
be
than you need.
a rise and fall quickly. We've got a few other predictions. Well, the one thing that we saw happen big in 2022, and it's been brewing for a while, but for the first time, the number one artist in the world was a non-English first artist. And that was a huge accomplishment this year with Bad Bunny. And we've seen the rise of other things like BTS out of like the K-pop thing. And we've seen other artists from other areas of the world, but like Bad Bunny has just dominated this year, and he's the number one artist in the world. And yeah, mixed language as well. So that's what's interesting to hear. More music hitting the mainstream where there's multiple languages in a particular song. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah. So your prediction is
that will continue.
That's not going away, and it'll accelerate.
I think it's going to accelerate, especially out of Latin America. I had the privilege of going to the Latin Grammys in 2019, and it blew my mind. The performances were amazing, and it was every genre you can imagine. I think people have a lot of misconceptions in their mind when they think about music from Latin America. Yes, there are the traditional things that were represented there, but there was hip hop, there was rock, there was amazing pop and alternative rock, anything you can imagine. There it was there, and it was in mixed languages, and it was just had a really unique sound and flair that I think is gonna be desirable. More people are gonna seek that out.
I think that's a good prediction. What's next on the list? This is something you say a lot, but it will probably be more true. Video will be expected to be packaged in some way with the music. It might not be required, but things like Spotify Canvas will be more and more of those types of things where a video component is just part of the release.
Yeah, and we've been hearing rumors of this like from DSPs for years. And I don't know why none of them have come to fruition yet. I think for a while, maybe video has lagged because like Apple for a while looked at trying to sell videos.
Oh, right.
And that probably slowed development in like it being a component of a release. But I still don't understand why anyone would buy a music video. You can go look on YouTube anytime you want. Anytime you have that whim of seeing that video, it is at your fingertips and you don't need to buy it. So to me, that seemed to slow some of the development, people thinking, oh, this is another sales opportunity. But I think as people continue to develop these digital platforms, that's one of the things that they've talked about, adding more video components within Spotify and all the other streaming platforms. So that's something I expect that just as an artist, you should be thinking about video as you're making music. I think maybe that might go into some of the creator first mindset, that it's not just about creating a song, it's about creating all the other assets that need to go along with it to represent that song out into the world.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the last things on our list says the metaverse will collapse, and we've already talked a bit about the metaverse, but I don't know if you had more to say on this, but particularly there's something I want you to say about using virtual reality type stuff to create music.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw somebody talking about this. It was like in a video. I don't know if it was a concept or if it was something that somebody actually developed, but it was like you put on the headset and then you were like in this virtual studio, and they're like, and then you can go over here and you can use this thing. And I'm like, why don't I just use the thing? Why don't I go to a real studio instead of standing in a room just doing this all day with a headset on? Why don't I just go to the real room? I don't understand.
Put this headset on and turn this fake knob instead of no headset and a real knob.
Yeah. So yes, I'm sure that it's nice. Like my dad, who's 78, has an Oculus for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I've used it a bunch. And then there's some fun things where it's like you could be at this national park and walk around a little bit. So I could see it's like, oh, you're in Abbey Road Studios and you could walk around a little bit. That would be fun. But when it comes down to actually creating music, and I'm not actually in Abbey Road there, so I'm just using software at that point. So why don't I just use software on my screen and not have a dumb headset on? So anyway, that's where I saw that and I was like, why do I want to put this on and pretend to turn a knob when I can just go turn a knob for real?
I like to imagine the metaverse as a real place with like this glass dome that's collapsing. That's the image you painted with that one.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. I just think that the benefit of the virtual space is not to do practical things. And so I think that's where it's struggled when it's trying to do something else. Like when, playing a game in the metaverse is fun.
Like a plumbing metaverse. Yeah, you can fix the pipe under your kitchen sink in the metaverse. Fuck.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
Yeah, exactly. Like where I played this game, it would really transport me, and I'd be like all freaked out. I had to play with my office door locked so no one walked in and scared the crap out of me. But that was cool and fun and interesting. But I was just there, being transported into a different world. I wasn't trying to, make a record or watch a show. We'll see.
Yeah. I think that might be it for our actual predictions, but I know you have a wish list.
Well, my main wish list item that I wish somebody would make, and I don't know why it hasn't happened, but attribution. Why do we not have attribution, people? It's not hard. Why do we not have album credits? I don't understand why this problem has been so hard to solve for the music business. The movie industry solved it ages ago. And we still don't have a consistent database and solution that everyone has adopted for music. And it drives me crazy because I feel like the streaming platforms have sort of stagnated as well. It's like everyone got excited about Spotify playlists and playlisting, and that was the last real innovation on the streaming world. Yes, there's some things like Release Radar and where music's being pushed to people. That's nice. But there really hasn't been, as far as a user experience, much of a change or anything new on these platforms. And with attribution, you can make the most amazing playlists and music listening rabbit holes ever.
If you give the people the credit they deserve so they can continue working and finding clients based on pure enjoyment of the person's work. When you compared it to the film industry, I'm like, yeah, I could figure out who catered the least popular Marvel movie in like 30 seconds. Why do I not know who mixed my favorite song?
You can't find it. It really makes me crazy. And I don't understand why the industry hasn't, especially the music production side, hasn't just made more of a fuss about it, because it's really missing from the music experience. And it's been solved for the movie world for ages, and that's more complex. Hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, may work on a movie. That's not the case with music. It's usually a handful of people. It shouldn't be that hard. We should be able to do this.
Yeah. I think my top wish list item is I don't want like TikTok and digital stuff to go away. Like, I love all that stuff. I do want to return to the feeling of the in-person, like the feeling we had at our conference, but more around live performances. I want people to remember that in the moment, music is essential to our humanness and can be all the more powerful because it's fragile and flawed and all that stuff. Like, I just want to see more good shows and not have the venues feel like they're, struggling to get people out. This is the year to like leave your house and turn your device off. Once in a while, like turn it off for like an hour a week and go to the show. Like, I don't need you to go on a, like cleanse.
Just an hour a week. That's all Chris asked.
Whatever. 2 hours for a show.
Turn it off and go to the show. I wonder if it is interesting, because I think the shine of the electronic devices, is gone. They're helpful tools. They're fun to use, but it's also very clear that there's some, negative side effects from always having a screen or access to anything you want in your pocket. Yeah. I was actually thinking about that the other day, and thinking about when, Silicon Valley, all those companies, they always doing their presentation, and Silicon Valley, the show, made fun of this all the time. Like, they would say, wrap up their app pitch or their new device pitch and say, making the world a better place. And it's like, at this point, did we really did we really make the world a better place? I don't know. To be determined.
Not in a meaningful enough way.
I mean, I wonder what Steve Jobs would think, because he loved music, if he went to a concert and couldn't see the stage because of the million iPhones being held up videoing the stage. And he's like,
What have I
Could you
done?
imagine that you could actually go that's my fault. I did that. I did that. I can't be pissed that I can't see anything because I did that.
Dr. Frankenstein and his monsters.
At least I can just say, I'm just going along with the flow, man. I'm just hanging on. But they actually did that. They changed it to, yeah. So it's interesting. It'd be curious to see, like you mentioned, like some younger folks. I have seen these headlines as well, going back to flip phones, trying to unplug or get more of a healthy balance.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't think you can stop once you get the cat's out of the bag with devices.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to I'm all gung ho about NFTs, like the digital stuff. It really excites me. But what did you just say? Balance, whatever it is, a healthy balance. I want us to remember to go to shows and go outside and hang out with friends without staring at the phones and all that stuff. But that's because I'm a curmudgeon, I guess.
Well, you and I are old enough to remember there was a time when that's how the world existed.
Actually, I think I use the word curmudgeon, but really what I mean is I'm grumpy, but I'm social.
You're grumpy, but you're
Because
social.
curmudgeon, doesn't that mean you like stay on your own?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I know the true definition of the word.
So I'm a social grump. Let's say that.
There you go. Let's see. The quick definition by Googling it is a bad-tempered person, especially an old one.
Oh, maybe I was okay to use that then.
Some of the similar words: crank, crosspatch, never heard of that, sourpuss, old trout.
Wow.
So there you go.
Right.
Chris, stop being an old trout.
All right. Sorry.
All right. Well, we would love to hear what your predictions are for 2023. You can call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. Are there things you're excited about, things you're worried about? What are your plans for 2023 as far as your career is concerned? Do you have some big goals, some things you want to achieve? Call and let us know or email us. Again, the number is 360-524-2209 or podcast@cdbabypodcast.com.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, like, I think we always ask for some amazing story or like great advice. I'd just be curious to hear, like, my top goal for this year is X, whatever. I want to sell out a local show, even if it's, something very humble and achievable. It'd be cool to hear what people are prioritizing.
No, I think that's good because, and I don't know if I was thinking about doing an episode like that about goals, or I don't know. I was thinking about it and about artists having like, what's your short-term goal? Like this, I want this to happen in the first 3 months or first 6 months of 2023. And how are you going to make that happen compared to maybe some bigger career goals? Like, I want to be here in a year or 2 years or 3 years. I think both are important because oftentimes I think artists, we have the big lofty goal and then we just do a bunch of random crap that's all over the place in a bunch of different directions that doesn't really build up to the main goal. We end up scrolling and just posting crap on TikTok. TikTok. That's the new one coming out next year. Yeah. All right. We do have some calls and some emails. So why don't we dive into that? Let's start with a call. Here we go.
Hi guys, I know you spoke a lot about the Spotify pitching tool and Spotify algorithms and Spotify editorial team, and I know we keep asking the same thing, and thank you for answering it over and over again. But just a moment ago, I had another wondering, does the editorial team consider the amount of pre-saves gathered by the time they receive your pitch? Could it be a real case, or am I just fantasizing and fixating on details? If they do, that means I should gather all the pre-saves that I'm sure of, right? It's one thing if I don't know how many pre-saves my release will gather overall, but if I know about, let's say, 30 friends and listeners that will be truly interested in my new release, should I gather their pre-saves first and then pitch to the editorial team? If that's a real case, then it brings up a new perspective on the matter of planning your release way ahead, right? Thank you. By the way, it's Elijah Sibirak. Thank you, guys. Bye.
That was an interesting question. We've not got that question before about pre-saves, if they make any difference
In the
as
pitch.
it relates to the Spotify editorial team. So here is the thing with Spotify pre-saves, which is different than Apple Music. Spotify pre-saves, the way they are done is by, like, if you use show.co and I'm a fan of your music, when I pre-save your music, I am authorizing show.co as an app on my account in Spotify. And on the day of release, that app goes and saves the track. So there's no upfront knowledge by Spotify about how many people have pre-saved it, with my understanding and how it works.
And that's the same for every pre-save, third-party pre-save tool out there. Spotify had been testing their own sort of native pre-save thing, which I'm sure that stuff is viewable to their editorial team. But so yeah, I think the short answer is no, that won't help you in the pitch.
Yeah, because also the Spotify editorial team, ideally, I mean, most of us are thinking, oh, it just has to be at least 7 days out. 7 days is the bare minimum for it to functionally work. That is not the recommended time frame. Usually, editors are working weeks, if not months in advance. Like big featured releases, like for, I don't know why, Death Cab for Cutie just jumped to mind, and mainly because I remember them announcing their new album, like 6 months before it came out. I'm like, well, tell me when it's, I can go listen. I don't care right now. Anyway, so a release like that, Spotify will know months and months and months in advance. And before pre-save campaigns or anything would really be driving, because for a lot of artists, it's like the last couple of weeks where the activity around maybe a pre-save might pick up. And chances are the editorial team is already long gone from, being pitched the release for that week. So anyway, that's my understanding of how they work. I personally don't see why Spotify would spend a lot of time developing pre-saves natively, because I don't need to pre-save Stranger Things before it comes out. I just know when it's out, I go watch it. I don't know. I still think that there's places where we're still thinking about music as in the old school, like pre-saves. It's like there was a pre-sale because there was actual physical product and the store might sell out. So you could buy yours in advance to guarantee that you got it on release day.
Mhm.
That makes sense. When all I got to do is push a button, I don't see why I need to go push a button 2 weeks before that in order to have access to the button I'm already going to have access to. I don't get it. But if it gets fans engaged and if it has some sort of utility, great. And I think that was part of it with Spotify pre-saves. A lot of people were thinking, hey, it hits the algorithm hard, a lot of fans saving it, and that can be true. I don't know how much that weighs on it anymore because algorithms are always changing. So
yeah, I mean, I think that if Spotify sees a save that never gets listened to or gets listened to later versus a listen that turns into a save, I think the second is going to be a more powerful indicator because the listener has proven they heard it and liked it enough, then they save. So I always recommend people emphasize more of the Spotify follow campaigns through show.co than the pre-save. Just use, if you have a really good hook, use the same hook to get people to follow you on that platform, because then you're building your audience, who you can hit with every single release instead of just one.
I agree, because Spotify is going to push it to release radar for them. It'll also give you opportunities. They have the marquee tool, that advertising tool that they've rolled out, I think, to everyone now. And they even lowered the price to $125 for starting campaigns. I found that to be pretty valuable.
I think everyone in quotes. I do think there's still some minimum amount of like monthly listeners or
maybe
screen
so.
time or something you have to have.
Maybe so. But I found that tool is helpful. So to me, getting people to follow you there gives you more options than pre-saving, where, I don't know. You just have to think about, whenever you're asking people to do something, is all the hoops they're jumping through really going to have ultimate value for you? Are you just burning a conversion opportunity? And that's what pre-saves feel like to me. You're asking them to do a lot, and at the end, I'm not even sure there's benefit for either of you.
Agreed.
All right, we got an email. Hi, Kevin and Chris. James Hill here, Bikini Test Failure and Blague Records, Manchester, UK. Just wanted to say a quick thank you for the top tip in the podcast before last about groover.co. I jumped in with both feet for my new single, spent about $800 for around 500 contacts to give it the best shot I could afford. Once upon a time, I'd have spent, I think he meant to say thousands, but it's a bunch of zeros with a dollar sign in front of it. Thousands on CDs and postage. My first thought was, this saves me spending the next couple of weeks emailing the 2,000 station sites on my list and being disappointed at the tiny response these days. And the reaction in just this first 24 hours has been overwhelming. As Chris said, even the rejections are lovely. But most importantly, so far I've had 50 responses, so 10% of whom 2 out of 3 are playlisting, radio playing, reviewing the single video. There was a lot of like slashes in there. I await some confirmation in terms of extra Spotify streams, and then we're up against the question of, do people actually listen to their playlists anyway? But I'd conclude for now, this is the absolute best vindication I can get for my music. Thanks again. Keep them coming, James.
Nice.
I'm not sure vindication was the word he meant to use there, but that's what it says. Yeah, another positive Groover review. I need to go try it. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, you should. I was going to say about kind of the value of the playlists. I mean, I forget how many I ended up on. It was almost 40% of who I pitched to. And I definitely got the sense that like 3 or 4 of them were really like drove significant streams, and the rest, handful here and there, not that big an impact. But I wasn't expecting every playlist placement to have a big impact. I was happy that there was a handful that actually did, drive more meaningful plays.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to our next call.
Hey, Kevin and Chris, this is Sin, at Sin Spoken Word on all social media, sinspokenword.com. I'm a spoken word artist and musician from Fort Worth, Texas. You guys discussed breaking into your local scene, I think, on the latest episode, and asked if we had any tips. This is sort of tangential to breaking into your local scene, but something that a lot of people, I guess, don't apply that I found really helpful. Whenever I was first starting out, I went to all of the open mics, because that is a very common thing here, especially for spoken word. There are tons of open mics where they want to hear spoken word artists. And in and around where I live, in other cities like San Antonio, Austin, there are other spoken word open mics that you can go to. And I went and did featured performances at a bunch of them. And what I found when I was trying to book them, or when I'm trying to work with really anybody, is it's usually easier to just pop up in person and talk to them there than it is to try to get a response via email or phone, because some people are just busy. Even with the open mic I host, if I need to speak to the venue, I'll usually just drive up there and talk to them in person. Obviously don't harass people, but what I would do is I would go to another one of their events and ask them if I could get booked for an upcoming one. And I just found that things usually went a lot faster and smoother that way. And it's usually the advice I give to everybody else.
That's good. A good tip. I think that was one thing. I think we mentioned it later on in the episode, but open mics didn't get mentioned on our list as strongly as we probably should have, as being an opportunity to break into a scene. But what I like about his tip is it's not just about breaking into a scene, it's about building contacts and building relationships with people. And when you have something that's reoccurring at a venue like an open mic, it could be so much easier to just show up in person and say hi than to be fighting their inbox constantly and getting frustrated. So to me, the good tip was like, go in person and make yourself known in person and a participant in the community. And that's going to probably move much quicker for you than fighting people's inboxes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and open mics are sort of unique for, I don't know if they're unique, but they're a great opportunity for what you're talking about, because you make the personal connection right there in the moment, but then you can also prove yourself to them. Like, you can potentially get a spot, go play on stage, and then they know exactly what they're dealing with. It's like all that other stuff about digital back and forth. Are you good? Are you not? They just saw you, and now you're talking to them in real time. So it just removes so many layers of negotiation.
Yeah, because some of the things that are going through a club booker's mind, or maybe an event planner, anybody who's needing to bring talent together, especially on an ongoing basis where their job relies on it. It's like, one, they're wondering, are you a cool person to deal with? I mean, I don't mean like cool factor. I mean, like, are you not a flake?
Yeah.
Do you seem like someone that's going to show up and do what you say you're going to do, and that they can rely on you? Two, do you have talent and the goods to deliver? And those things you can do real quickly, right then and there at an open mic, that you can't do in somebody's inbox. You can send links back and forth and, try to craft nice emails, but they're like, okay, yeah, that person seems like someone that'll show up and do what they say, and they've got talent, I'll book them,
Well, and then you also remove what I find the most frustrating part of making anything happen in my life, because I'm very busy and most people are busy, is like, if this all happened by email and they wanted to book you, okay, great. How about Tuesday, December 14th? Crap, I'm busy that night. Anything in the new year? Yes. How about February 14th or this? Well, one of those works. And then by the time all this happens, you get back. Sorry, that night is booked. Like, when you're face to face, it's just, you're both staring at your calendars and you can say what works and doesn't and just get the thing ironed out.
Yeah. And you can use this tip for just any club as well. It doesn't have to be an open mic. If you're going to shows, you can, I would probably recommend like the midweek show, not the early, like Monday and Tuesday, the normal staff probably aren't there. Like the club booker's probably not hanging around. But maybe midweek, go to the show, get there early. The booker's probably hanging around, still finish up their workday. Might be an opportunity to say hi, or just understand how they operate and work, and get to know people there when it's less stressful. You don't want to go when they've got a big headliner and they're running around crazy trying to make sure everybody's happy. Yeah, just you can make yourself present at venues and get to know people, and it can be easier than fighting their inbox. All right, we've got one last email. Here we go. Hi, I'm Dave. I'm Australian, and I listen to the podcast. I'm wondering, in one of your sessions, you were talking about your kids getting into music in in an entirely different way. They judge a song, new or old, on its merit and indiscriminately listen. You mentioned the Kate Bush, Stranger Things, and Metallica. I'm wondering if you could do an episode on this and entwine a session on becoming an older musician. Once I hit 30, I thought it was all over. Oh, this is you may have saw, this is the email I got that I posted something about on TikTok. And
I did see it. Yeah.
So yeah. Once I hit 30, I thought it was all over. I'm now 43 and as passionate as ever, but worry there's a ceiling as to how old you can be to succeed. A lot of musicians struggle with getting older as a musician. I'm wondering if you can help highlight with examples like how your kids approach new music to them, new or old songs, to give us older musicians hope that the music industry is changing and there is a place for us. And that was from Dave. And I think his band must be called The Wooden. That's how it's signed. So yes, there's a couple interesting things in there. One, how music consumption has changed drastically. And I think this is something that is, it's obvious, but at the same time, how much artists and the industry itself still thinks and operates like it is in the old days of going to a music store, buying a physical product, and then if that physical product doesn't sell, it's no longer available in the music store, it goes out of print. And there's still a lot of people operating and thinking about opportunities for the music in that same paradigm, and it's completely different now. Yeah, it's just the way newer generations are experiencing music. It's nothing like, there's no store, there's no like, oh, it's a new release date. It's just content is available and out whenever. They don't think about it that way. They don't think about something being an old song or a new song. They just think about, hey, I heard this song and I love it. It's so different, and so many people are listening. And I think one of the other things that's really different, it was funny, my phone wasn't working, the connector to my car wasn't working, and the FM radio came on and music was playing, like popular music, and my oldest daughter, who just turned 16, said, "They play music on the radio?" And she knew they played music on the radio, but what she was commenting on was that she was hearing a newer song. She thought it was just like all the oldies and stuff like that, because I never have the radio on and never listen to new music that way. So for them, it's everyone's having their own unique personal music experience, where for generations of the music business, everyone was sort of having this collective experience at the same time, because the places we were listening were radio and we were all hearing the same things. So it's very different. And yeah, I don't think age and even a lot of the branding around artists come into play as much as maybe it did in the past. It's still important, but I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
Well, when you were talking about the limited shelf space in physical stores, I thought you were going to make a statement about age based on that, because when there was only so much space to put albums, you had to select a certain amount of albums. There was only so much airtime on the radio. There was only so much MTV, or, like, it's just these limited bandwidth for the music that the labels could push to, this mass market.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, they were going to pick the young, most attractive, most malleable, like, pop stars they could find. But we don't live in that world anymore, which means people can choose whatever they want, which also means I think age is less a factor in being able to reach people through not mass media, but media that no longer needs to be mass media. It's like algorithmic media or whatever we want to call it. And so, like, on the last episode of our podcast, we talked about Algie Powers on TikTok, who's a woman probably in her maybe mid 60s to mid 70s, something like that. She is killing it on TikTok, just playing folk songs and walking around and saying funny things about her life. And so, like, even if you pursue digital attention, I don't think age, I don't want to make it sound easy. There's, it's probably still much easier for the younger, attractive person. But anyways, it's definitely,
isn't it always easier for in all aspects?
Right. But it's no longer like an absolute barrier is one thing. But then also, if you turn away from the digital side of things, like, I participate pretty heavily in these communities like Folk Alliance and Northeast Regional Folk Alliance, which are genre based, it's singer-songwriter stuff. But I guess what I'm trying to get at there is that there's these circles of communities that exist that are sort of concentric generational circles, and there's always a huge seat at the table for they call them the elders because they want to acknowledge the wisdom and experience of those people. They let those people participate in a kind of mentorship role. Then there's kind of the more middle-aged people who they look at as, well, you're all adults with like means and experience, so we need you to run this ship at this point. And then there's the younger people who are like, we're hungry to showcase and learn. Anyways, I just think it's this beautiful way of like everyone gets to participate. And in those environments, I think there's tons of opportunity for older performers. And, you know, you're 43, so it's not like you're old, but just start to find some communities like that you can lean on to still have the opportunities you want, performance-wise, recording-wise, or whatever, collaboration. It's out there.
Well, in the video I posted on TikTok and Reels, which, by the way, if you want to connect with me there, I'm just at K Bruner. I said, yes, ageism does exist in the music business, and the entertainment industry as a whole can get hyper-focused on youth culture. But you just have to focus on writing great music and connecting with people that like that kind of music. Doesn't matter what age they are. And the thing that I think is funny when you think about that, it comes up a lot in the music world. And, you know, I think it is because of the video, the imagery component, the branding that goes along with music, especially mainstream music. Excuse me. Everyone wants to look hip and cool and young and healthy and vibrant.
As we're coughing.
As I cough and die here. You can see what stage my career's in. But that tends to happen. But it's funny because with art, with any craft, you get better over time. It's like a songwriter in their 40s that has lived 20 more years of life than a songwriter in their 20s should technically be a far superior songwriter. And so it's like, or they're going to write about different things and have different perspectives. And so that's what to me is funny about that notion in general with art. Like we would never, I think maybe less so with like, you think like a painter. I don't think that anyone thinks about, oh, this painter's in their 60s. They suck. You know, well, they may be a master painter, like have all these masterpieces. I don't know. It's weird.
I've said this a few times on the podcast, but when I stepped away from music for, I don't know, a couple years, maybe about 10 years ago, I was burnt out and I really dove into poetry. And I blew my mind because there's this thing called the Yale, what is it called? The Yale Award for Younger Poets or something like that. And the definition, the industry definition of a young poet is someone who's under 40. I was like, oh, wow. Like this is this is amazing. Like they recognize that, you know, whatever age and experience and stuff, it's like, you're going to get better and better and better. And generally, if there's a good poet, the expectation is by the time they're 75, they're writing their best stuff then. Not they're like, oh, isn't it sad and pathetic that they're still writing? It's like, no, you expect them to be masters at that point. Why is it any different from music?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny that that's the expectation. It's funny because I think a lot of musicians think about their career like athletes do, like their body breaks down and can't do it anymore. And I'm like, why? I'm the best guitar player at this point in my life that I've been my whole career. And I've grown and changed and figured things out. And sure, I might've been able to do different things or was focused on different things when I was younger, but I'm definitely a much better player and songwriter and all that kind of stuff and creator in general. So it's like, why do we think about it like we're professional athletes?
Well, I could, from the physicality standpoint, I could see like the timbre of your voice or your vocal range. You might lose some of that with age, or if you're like a virtuoso instrumentalist, maybe you lose your dexterity or something with age. But I think more like from the artistry standpoint, your your songwriting, your perspective, like that doesn't have to be what you were when you were 20. It can have diminished in a technical proficiency standpoint and still improve in artistry. So I definitely think it's different from athletics in that way because music isn't only physical.
Yeah, correct. And that's the point. To me, like you see, you know, if it was just about youth, it's like if youth is so important for a music career, then it would be very similar to I like football. And it's like, I can't imagine at my age being hit by a 300-pound man over and over again. I couldn't imagine it in my 20s either, but I definitely wouldn't want that to happen now. But, as far as like creating and writing and all that kind of stuff, I have so much experience to draw from that. To me, it just makes it better. And that's, I think, how musicians should look at what they're doing.
I'm imagining like the retirement ceremony for musicians. Once they turn 35, they have to like they have to hang their band clothes up on the wall and walk out of a room slowly as music fades, never to make music again.
And honestly, I think musicians are the worst at perpetuating this idea. It's something that we've perpetuated ourselves. Not, there is the mainstream music market that is hyper focused on youth culture, but with the world and access to the market as independent artists, there's no gatekeeper keeping you out of the market. There's no gatekeeper not letting you connect with fans. And so why are we perpetuating the idea that we're too old? That's
it. So when I was thinking, just exactly when you use the term gatekeeper, if we think our age is holding us back, it's because we're seeking permission from someone who's going to say, yes, you're young enough, or no, you're too old. What do we need permission from anyone? Fuck those people. Like, we're past that. Like, we have the access in our pocket. We can make our own music. Like, we don't need permission from anyone. I mean, I suppose we need permission from our audience, but that's just mutual benefit of them being like, yes, I like what you do. Please do more.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you're looking for permission from somebody or some sort of acceptance. It's like, just get people to push the play button. That's the only acceptance you need.
It's as simple and hard as that.
It is. All right. Well, that brings us to the end, Chris.
That's good. I got a couple F-bombs into this episode.
Yeah, to close out the year. But, the last thing I'll say on the age thing, I think that some of my favorite cover songs that I hear is when an artist does a song and somehow it's transformative in some way, like them doing this song transforms the song in my brain to make the song even better, whether it's their version, but oftentimes it's from their perspective. So I've seen two versions of Creep by Radiohead that really did that for me. And I love Radiohead, but honestly, I've never been a big fan of that song. It's okay. I thought it's an okay song. But then when and when they wrote it, they were young. They were probably in their early 20s. And it's like this angsty band. It was their first hit. And but then when I saw somebody do a very mellow, it was an older musician in her late 30s doing a very mellow version, singing it, the perspective of that person's where they were in life and their story transformed that song to me in a way that it's like I heard it completely different and then loved the song. And I think that's something that older artists can do, because like Johnny Cash, that version of Hurt that he did,
right?
When you hear him and knowing what stage of life he's in, sing that song, it had so much weight. In fact, I think I saw some list saying like best cover songs of all time, and I think that was one of the top ones that they had was Johnny Cash doing Hurt by 9 Inch Nails. And so to me, I think that's an example of how like there's something from age and experience that you just can't get when you hear a song sung from that perspective. It's really amazing.
So what you're saying is we all need to learn to lean into our gravitas as we age.
That's right.
We just assume that we're more important and wise with our years.
That's right.
Okay.
I didn't need a phone to get through high school. I used a freaking payphone, and if I didn't have change, I just sat there until someone came and picked me up.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
When you didn't recognize the song, you had to wait until you heard it again, and then
you just argued endlessly with somebody. Right. No, I'm right. No, you couldn't Google it and solve the problem. See, there's less arguments now because you can just get the answer
Or we just argue faster.
faster. Yeah, that's right. We get on to the next argument quicker.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 2022 was an interesting year. I'm looking forward to 2023. We'll see what it has in store. Nothing's felt normal in a while, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. We definitely look forward to a whole nother year of podcasting and discussion around marketing music, releasing music. I have big plans for that in 2023. Chris, you still have like 10 albums you need to release.
I do. I've got an EP ready to come out.
Excellent. So it's going to be a good year. And we look forward to seeing you there. So yeah, we'll catch you later.
See you then.